Today, we're looking at an orange ink by Monteverde Topaz. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below so that if you're only interested in certain parts, you can skip around. But if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram. And if you're new here and like fountain pen ink reviews, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Noodler's Nib Creeper, wrote with it for a day, and used it to take the notes for this video. For the first writing sample, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. There is an additional writing sample that'll happen later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it comes in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. Now the extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub. It has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer quite a bit of shade spots. In the T is lighter than the rest of the. Brown starts dark and gets light. Over starts light and gets dark. The second the, very dark word, 9 seconds to dry. Now the medium is about the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, and a ton of very nice shading. Quick starts dark, gets light, gets very dark. Brown, the top of the B is much lighter than the bottom of the B, which the bottom's very dark, and then it works its way lighter through the word. Over goes light to dark to light to dark. Nice stuff, and 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows plenty of color variation, and we're getting plenty of color variation. Tomoe River. No bleeding, very little Tomoe River ghosting, but that's because of how light this ink is. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 14 seconds to dry. The medium is about the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading like the K in quick, the Q in quick, the BR in brown, the X in fox. There are some shading spots in there. 19 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows no color variation. We really didn't get it. The medium, if you look far left to far right, you do see a little bit, and we do get that in the writing sample. Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. Very nice color here. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. Now the extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub. It has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some very nice shading. Quick starts dark, gets light, gets dark. Brown starts dark and gets light. Fox goes from a medium tone to a light tone to a very dark tone. Nice stuff, and 11 seconds to dry. Now the medium is about the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and still a very nice shading. Look at Fox from light to dark. Over goes light to dark. The light to dark. Lazy, darker to lighter. 15 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show us plenty of color variation far left to far right, and we do get that in the writing. I agree with Vita that we learn a lot when we do multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And this is a really unusual chromatography because there's this light gray line across the bottom that's just there. Now it pushes up and we get this kind of peachy orange color and then a bright yellow line across the top. And I know when I see some of those bright colors across the top, that usually does show me that I'm going to get some shading. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And you can't tell the difference between the two of them at all. And even that hold-on color, I don't think is going to hold on very much from the bottom of the chromatographies. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I go straight to the lowercase h that's completely blown out, and I worry about losing anything that's important, so I wouldn't use it in a note-taking situation. Now water is reactivating and lifting almost all this ink off the page. It's only 30 seconds of it sitting there. I really do think that given just a little bit more time, it'll be completely gone, and that's because on the lower edge of that, I start to see the white of the paper coming through. If, for some reason, it wasn't enough, pen flush certainly starts to show the white of the paper, meaning pen flush is all you would need to get this out of your pen. 1/3 bleach solution does completely obliterate it, but there's no need to use that to clean this from your pen. I test viscosity or flow with a tilt test that I'll link down below in a description or in a card. Now for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Monteverde's Topaz has a viscosity of 2.34, making it normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average all of those. Now for the inks I've tested, I've found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Monteverde's Topaz has an average dry time of 13 seconds, making it right on the edge of normal, but still normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Monteverde's Topaz, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. Now I wanted a nice darker color because of how bright this orange is, so I went with a black ink, Private Reserve's Invincible Black. The second writing sample is done on Apica CD, black and red, and Franklin Christoph paper. Here we're looking at the Apica CD notebooks. It has no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some shading. Look at that Y, how it's lighter than the letters around it. Look at the shading that's going on in the T, where it's dark on the left side, light on the right side. So there is some nice shading to get through the stub on this paper. Extra fine is lighter than we get with the 1.1, with no feather spread, halo sheen. More subtle shading, but it's definitely there. Look at brown, goes darker to lighter to darker. Fox, the top of the F and the bottom of the F are two different tones. It's light into the O, dark into the X. Lazy goes from dark to light. 7 seconds to dry. Now medium is slightly darker than the extra fine, not quite as dark as the stub. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen, and some very nice shading. It starts dark, gets lighter, gets very dark. Brown starts dark and gets light. So it's nice, it's there, it's very subtle. Very nice here. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show plenty of color variation, far left to far right, and we get it in the writing samples. How about black and red notebooks? No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. Now the extra fine is slightly lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 5 seconds to dry. More absorbent paper. It's going to eat up some of the shading. Medium is a little darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 7 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get it on this paper. And last up is the Franklin Christoph paper, with no bleeding, no ghosting. Again, this is a little bit more absorbent paper. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. Now the extra fine is a little lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 6 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, but it does show shading, even with this more absorbent paper. Brown starts darker, gets a little lighter, gets a little darker. The starts light and gets dark. Lazy starts as a mid-tone and works its way lighter. Now 7 seconds to dry. Scrubby of the extra fine shows no color variation, and we got none. And the scrubby of the medium, far left to far right, has color variation, and we do have it up here. So not too bad. That is all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of Monteverde Topaz. I like how well it shades. I like how it looks in its darker tones. While it shades very nicely from its very light to its very dark tones, I get a lot of its very light tones, which does make it a little bit harder to read through a whole paragraph. My notes take a little bit of effort in this very well-lit room. So for that reason, I don't care for it. But I do like vibrant oranges. This one just feels a little bit off for my taste. So what pen and nib are going to give the best writing experience? In order to go from not the lights to darks, but the mediums to darks, so that I can read it more easily and get the best experience, I had to use a very wet, very broad pen. Then I still had shading and it was much easier to read, although still not easy to read. If you've made it this far, and according to my analytics, 50% of you aren't, and you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. If you are not subscribed, I would invite you to subscribe, and thanks for watching.